In this video, I want to cover diffusion and in particular how the survival response fits into this. The survival response has been around for thousands of years, since the beginning of time, and it's something that's kept us protected, it's kept us safe, it's kept us alive, and that's why we're here today. What it's also done is it's gone out and become somewhat problematic in modern civilization in the way that we're living today, and I want to go out and break that up a little bit because it's something that I certainly contend with my clients on a daily basis. And so we're looking at diffusion and how the survival response fits into that. And there's a couple of ways that I want to look at it. One is the fight or flight response, which is actually a more sudden approach. And then there's this other one that I suppose underpins survival, but it's not this immediate fight or flight where we get adrenaline, but it's kind of like a survival routine level of safety. So it looks like this. For me to explain it, I need to actually go back some many thousand years ago where we were quite limited in our resources. We're still doing hunter-gatherer type living. So let's say for example, we're going back 5,000, maybe even 10,000 years ago. And so it would look like this. We're in a scenario where there's a bush that we're going out and we're collecting food from. So this is our source of food. Here I am standing, picking berries from a bush, going about my normal daily routine. Now, while I'm picking these berries, I'm in an open plain or a jungle or a forest or wherever that might be, and I'm picking the berries, but what am I looking out for? What is it that I'm searching for? What am I scanning for? And the most common response will be, well, for danger, for any predators, for any threats. So in actual fact, danger is at the heart of this, where it's a survival response. We're looking for danger even while we're doing something like picking berries, but we need to do that to ensure that we've got survival. Now, danger is experienced as a threat, and a threat is something that you and I would call uncomfortable. So now we're in a situation where we're feeling uncomfortable purely through a survival response. To be alive and to survive means we've got to be feeling uncomfortable. And there's a few ways that we go out and we feel uncomfortable that the human experience. The first way is through thoughts. And the second one is sensations. Now, for the purpose of this video, we're actually wanting to focus on the thoughts because we're putting diffusion into context. So what occurs is we've got thoughts and we've got sensations, and there's a survival response that's in the background, that's in play. So it would look like this. If I go out and I take a newborn baby, it's only 2 minutes old, and I take a pin and I take the baby's foot and I prick the baby's foot with the pin. What does the baby go out and do? They pull away. Who's taught this baby in 2 minutes of its life that it needs to pull its foot away? And in actual fact, that's nature. This is how we're designed. It's the survival response. We need to have that available to us. So what we do is we control what's within our control. So we avoid. So we have an avoidance. And avoidance is based on the survival response. So danger over here is connected to avoidance down here. And another way of looking at avoidance is saying control. We take control. This baby took control and took his or her foot away. So we've got a danger response, we've got avoidance, it's survival. This is fantastic. This is what we want to go out and do. The issue here is that is quite a wonderful mechanism that we have when there's a sensation and when it's the integrity of our body that's at stake. We want to be able to control that. But diffusion deals with actually the thoughts. And the thoughts are quite important here because they are something that are quite difficult to avoid. And what ends up occurring is we try and control a danger response that is uncontrollable. The danger response is something that is inbuilt into us. It's instinct. It's a survival response. There is no way that I or yourself is going to override that instinctual response and stop that. Not without an amazing amount of training to go out and do that. So we've got a control mechanism based on danger, and danger can't be controlled. That's that thing which is out of our control. So trying to control the uncontrollable starts this struggle, and now we start this sort of fusion. And that's exactly what happens with thoughts. We fuse to thoughts that are uncomfortable and we have this fight. Now what's interesting is that you and I don't live anymore in a world where there's these dangers that occur with our physical integrity. We live in a very different type of world. But it just means the danger's slightly changed. So the danger looks like this. We are social beings. And as social beings, we like to be connected with others. And if we consider the value of being a social being from a survival response, we would have to go out and say we have safety in numbers. So what would happen is if a lion came along and attacked this group, if there were 10 members in the group, each member would have 90% chance of survival. Fantastic, that's wonderful. But they would also have 10% chance of death. Now, if the group was 100 strong, then each member has 99% chance of survival, much better odds, and 1% chance of death. So it's very useful to go out and have that. Now, the issue here is what happens if I get kicked out of the group, I get removed from the group. Now what occurs is that I become vulnerable. Now what's interesting is there's this desire for me to enter back into the group from a survival mechanism. Now, you and I are not in danger of physical integrity. There is no lion here. There is no leopard, there is no bear, there is no snake that's going to harm us in that sense. Most of us live in a modern world where those things aren't occurring. But what happens is the survival response continues. It's still alive. It doesn't go away. So the survival response remains, and what happens is it continues to feed us commentary, thoughts, assumptions, questions, answers, judgments, statements, facts. It's just popping out all these ideas to go out and tell us to reconnect, to be in the group. So what ends up happening is this person over here begins to judge themselves against everybody else to try and fit in. If this person here can find their deficiency, for example, I'm not good enough compared to this person here, then they can go out and fix that up and they can be adopted into the group and they feel much better. And then they pick the next person and they might say, I'm not attractive enough. And if they go out and fix that up, then that person might adopt them as well and they can be back in the group. And then they pick the next person and say, I'm not intelligent enough. And the next person, I'm not funny enough. I'm not witty enough. And it goes through this cycle of I'm not enough into all of these categories, trying to go out and fit in. That's actually the danger response. It's not danger that's immediate in the fight or flight response. It's more of an underlying, underpinning experience. So we have fusion with all of these thoughts that are around survival. And that's what survival That's what the survival response is. It's this underpinning of thoughts that go out and make commentary about us having to fit in. Fitting in is very important because if we look at the modern world, we do live in groups. We need to fit in terms of the family. We need to fit in terms of our workplaces. We want to fit in socially. All of those things do give us a stronger sense of survival, and it's more likely that we're going to go out and meet a partner and procreate and so on and so forth. What's interesting here, though, is I do fit in. I do have a wonderful family, and I do have a beautiful network of friends, and I do have myself a partner, and so on and so forth. So all these things are wonderful, and I fit in. But what occurs is I can still be in the group, but I don't want to get kicked out of the group, right? The danger response just continues. The danger response does not go out and just go away once I feel comfortable. It tends to follow us. So it still goes out and says, that person has more success. They've succeeded more than I. They might not want to hang around with me. They might not want to associate with me. They might not want to be connected with me if I don't keep up. And so now we have this keeping up with the Joneses type of approach where we're trying to accumulate, whether it be wealth or whether it be status or whatever it might be. It doesn't just look at it from that sense. It says, how am I performing against this person with respect to humour, wittiness, so on and so forth, and how am I with regards to that person with respect to my physical fitness, my health, and so on. And every member is doing it with every other member of the group. Interestingly, when we see, let's say, young persons going down the street, we actually see that there are these categories and they all dress the same. Either short hair, or a lot of them have long hair, or they've got certain coloured clothing, or they've got certain type of shoes that they wear. Some have really baggy jeans, others have really tight jeans. Some won't wear jeans. It will be like a cargo type look. Some only short. There's all these different genres, if you will, of trying to connect. Now, from a diffusion point of view, what occurs here is we can't go out and avoid or control these thoughts that are looking at these deficiencies. We need another system, and diffusion is that answer. So diffusion says we have a survival set of thoughts that are constantly looking out for us. If I'm going hunting and I see some movement in the bush and I've got my spear some 5,000 years ago, the mind doesn't immediately go, run in there, it must be a rabbit. It stops and it says, watch out, it could be a bear. So the survival response keeps me alive. And so in this sense as well, it looks for what it could be to keep me alive. So it needs to look at, if I can say, the negative or all those parts that aren't so helpful at times. So rather than avoidance, we want to actually be able to hold, to accept. And this is that experiential acceptance. When we're looking at thoughts, though, when we're looking at diffusion, it's the diffusion that we're working on here. So the steps are, number one, we want to notice. So we notice the thought, we notice the commentary, we notice the judgment, and a lot of the time, a tip is it's assumptions. We're working with assumptions. We're working with these opinions, these assumptions, these comments, judgments, but assumptions in particular we work with clinically. After we notice, we usually need to go out and we notice and we label. We try and give it a category. Otherwise, we have to try and notice every single thought. So we're trying to label or to categorize. So we give it a label, so that way we can understand it as a bigger whole. It makes it easier to work with. After that, we go out and we make room for, and we somewhat do that in this labeling process at the same time. So we do call it a thought, or we call it a story. And in this case, we can actually call it the survival response. So we make room for that, and then finally we let it be. We just let it be there rather than trying to push away or get rid of it. Isaac Newton said that if you go out and you push something, every action has an opposite and equal reaction. So if you push something, it will push back. If you try and get rid of something, it will go out and come back. So it's not wise to say let it go, because let it go means that you're dropping the thought, and we know that it's not something that we're able to do. We can't just drop a thought. We can let it be there. We make room for it, and it will pass. And the law of impermanence allows us to understand that as well. So the underpinnings here, what's really important to notice here is going back 5,000, 10,000 years ago, we're going out, we're looking for survival, we're picking berries, we go out and experience this survival response of saying, I need to make sure that I'm scanning, that I'm looking out for danger. That's the danger, the threat response, and it certainly feels uncomfortable. We now live in the modern world. So the survival response is still just as strong as it was back then, but it's changed. Now we're looking to fit. We're looking to fit in. We're looking to remain connected like we were back then, but there's no physical danger often involved in our lives. So now we look at things like I'm not good enough. We look at all these deficiencies in the different areas of my life. They're the thoughts that we get. That's the survival response. It's just moved into other categories, into other areas, and that's exactly what I want to do. I notice it, and now I find those other areas, I label them, I make room for them, and let them be. So this is diffusion with the survival response. It's very, very, very easy for clients to understand this, because often they've got this experience, particularly over here. I think this is a really important part to re-emphasize, that we're looking for deficiencies. And that's why many of us experience the I'm not good enough phenomena, or that feeling, or those thoughts, those comments, those judgments. And we can diffuse by them. That's the survival response. So thanks, mind, for trying to keep me alive. Thanks, mind, for protecting me. That's the protection story. All of those diffusion strategies will have a great effect, particularly with a really strong understanding, a really good level of psychoeducation that we can give to our clients. So start using that with your clients. Think about some of those danger responses that show up for you, and I'm sure that will make a really useful and beneficial change and effect in your clinical work. See you next time.